Did you know that there's an official feature-length Warhammer 40k movie? It's true, Ultramarines, a Warhammer 40k movie, was released in 2010 to a critical and audience reception of meh. And to this day, nobody really seems to talk about it that much. I didn't even know it existed until a couple years ago when I found a re-upload of the entire movie on YouTube. And in spite of Warhammer only growing in popularity since the film's release, DW has never tried to make anything like it since. So why does nobody talk about this movie? Well, that's what this video is about. Think of it like an autopsy, except instead of us investigating what happened to a corpse that is killed by a phantom bullet, we're instead looking at a movie that nobody cares about. So with that said, let's start with the basics. What actually is an Ultramarine? Yes, I'm going to be talking to you about bullshit 40k lore for the next few minutes. I'm not sorry. The Ultramarines are one of the many chapters of Space Marines. They are also the most boring. Basically every Space Marine chapter has something that they are good at or a specific bit that makes them stand out. For example, having an affinity for cybernetics and technology, theft, eating people, setting children on fire, being an edgelord, The Ultramarines, on the other hand, don't really have a bit. Technically they're supposed to be space Romans, but that never really comes across in any of the games or shows or art they are depicted in. Instead, they're just the Space Marines, meaning that most people don't have any particularly strong feelings about them one way or another, and this is also why no one is a fan of them. If you say you're a fan of the Ultramarines, no you're not, you fucking liar.
Part 2. Premise and characters.
The movie's basic premise is that some wacky shit is going down on the planet Mithron, a shrine world protected by the Imperial Fists. And now our rookie band of Ultramarines has to go find out what's going on and stop it. After the opening credits, which we're gonna come back to, we get a scene introducing us to our main characters. We don't learn much about most of them because they don't fucking matter. But this guy's name is Proteus, and he's our main character. You might not realize he's supposed to be the main character because all these characters look the fucking same, but trust me, he is. Outside of a few brief moments, the only people in our main cast given any actual sense of personality are Proteus, the apothecary Pythol, and Captain Severus. Yes, I did have to look up all their names. They do attempt to give these characters something while they're all preparing for the mission, but by the time they all put on their helmets, they just become a faceless blob that exists to get killed off unceremoniously one by one. Spoiler alert. Only made occasionally distinctive if they have an identifiable weapon. That's not Brother Skibideus or whatever, that's Flamethrower Guy. He has a flamethrower, and that's his only character trait. Speaking of characters, so you might have noticed how these characters, look, and it's not great. According to interviews hosted on the Ultramarines YouTube channel, which is maybe the saddest thing I've ever seen in my entire life.
The possibilities really are amazing, and it's like, can't wait! It's gonna be brilliant. I heard about it today, I was like, you've got to be kidding me, Ultramarines film. Yes!
Ultramarines was made on a budget of roughly $8 million over about 4 years. While I'm sure plenty of talented people worked on the film, you can still tell it was on a pretty tight budget. To put it into perspective, Ultramarines, a Warhammer 40k movie, came out in December 2010. That's about 4 months after the release of How to Train Your Dragon, and almost exactly a year before the release of The Adventures of Tintin. Personally, I think the movie as a whole looks fine. It's not Rhapsody Street Kids, but it's also not Into the Spider-Verse, and it manages to capture the vibes and aesthetic of Warhammer 40k pretty well, at least when they aren't in a barren desert. Actually, that's still pretty accurate to 40k. Given the movie's budget, I think it came out looking pretty okay. It's a little crazy how atmospheric this movie can be at times, with a lot of moody lighting and strange gothic mixed with sci-fi architecture, but that's less to do with the technology and more to do with the art direction of the film. But if there is one thing that is obviously done wrong, it's the faces. Every character looks like a freakazoid homunculus skinwalker who's been bone smashing for 300 years. And while that is true, I wouldn't really expect a small British animation company with a relatively minuscule budget to be able to make realistic 3D faces and heads. So the fact they even tried is almost impressive. Look, you get it. The animation's not great and not terrible. We're moving on.
Excuse me, sir, there must be someone you've confused before.
Anyway, hey! Have you ever wondered why Warhammer 40k is called that? Well, it's because the Ultramarine Second Company have a sacred Warhammer with them. Apparently. The rest of this film's story is very generic. Not necessarily in a bad way, but if you've watched a movie or know anything about Warhammer, you know where this is all going. Who are the bad guys gonna be? Black Legion. Who are the good guys gonna be? Ultramarines. This movie doesn't do anything new or interesting with the setting of 40k, which makes me think this is supposed to be some sort of on-ramp for people who aren't into 40k to get into 40k, which isn't really a bad thing, I guess. But it makes for a pretty boring watch if you aren't wowed by the idea of fantasy shit, but in space. While we're here, I might as well talk about the ending. So after fighting a bunch of guys and saving some fist fellers, the gang gets back onto the ship with significant losses. But, oh no, Captain Severus, who we also thought died, has actually been turned into a daemon, and our boys in blue gotta stop them before he eats McCrag, I think? Anyway, they kill the thing, the day is saved, everyone in the movie except Proteus and this guy gets fucking peeled. Something something cycle of violence, cut to credits. The plot, like the animation, is fine, utterly inoffensive. It's functional for taking our walking meat sacks from point A to point B and watching them shoot bad guys. And if that's all you really want out of Warhammer, then good for you. But personally, I prefer something a little more interesting. Like, what if they were fighting orcs or necrons instead of just chaos? Again, there are hints of a war is hell theme to the whole movie, but whether or not that's just an aesthetic choice or the filmmakers trying to give the movie a political message is very unclear, to the point where it's just confusing why it comes up every so often. And for a plot that exists almost exclusively so that we can have cool action scenes, the action scenes aren't even that cool. Everyone just stands around shooting at each other, and occasionally, if you're lucky, you'll get a reverse shot of someone exploding. There's no movement, there's no interesting set pieces, it's just shoot bad guy gets shot, over and over. Forever. This movie pretty clearly takes a lot of inspiration from Aliens, but let's compare some of the action scenes from that movie to the action scenes in this movie. In Aliens, all of the characters are in tight spaces where everything's tense and creepy and they're not really sure what's going to be around the next corner. But in Ultramarines, everyone's just shooting at each other from open fields. There's nothing around them that someone could hide behind. It's just people taking potshots at each other until someone fucking dies. It's completely empty and lifeless. And on top of all that, the characters are so nothing that it takes until like 30 minutes in for any characters to talk about anything other than honor or the mission or whatever. And it never really comes up and doesn't really contribute to the plot at all. It feels more like padding than character development. However, while I've been mainly criticizing this aspect of the film, it's not bad. There's no point in which I actively wanted to look away from the screen in horror just from how profoundly terrible it is. It's just inoffensive. It's not doing anything I haven't seen before, but it doesn't overstay its welcome, and it does everything that it's trying to do perfectly okay. It's like watching a Fast and the Furious movie, except with at least 10% less Vin Diesel. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are wondering why you've never heard of this movie. You'd think that if a movie about Space Marines came out, more people would have talked about it, and this is because of a few reasons. As you could have probably guessed, Ultramarines didn't do well financially, and that was due to a few factors. Firstly, as might be evident, the movie didn't get a lot of advertising. It got some advertising at a few conventions, mostly 40k related, and that was basically it. No TV spots, no trailers, not even a poster to my knowledge. Now that might not be too crazy in our modern world, but remember, this was 2010. The main way that people learn about a new film is seeing a poster for it and looking it up online, or seeing it on TV and looking it up online. When you exclusively advertise within 40k conventions, the only way people are gonna know about your film is if they already know about the film. So outside of the insular world of the late 2000s 40k community, the film was effectively not advertised. That's already a massive blunder, meaning that very few people would come to see it in theaters. However, it also wouldn't be shown in theaters. Yeah, that's right. Ultramarines, a 40k movie, a film that cost $8 million to make, was only ever released as a DVD. Hi, Editing Yuli here. I just wanted to say that I have no idea where I got that $8 million figure from. None of the other sources that I've used throughout this video seem to have any information on a budget related to the movie. I did decide to look into it, and the best sources that I could find, and realize these are the best sources, were a website called The Numbers, which seemingly calculates the money and stuff behind, movies and things like that. And they estimated the film's production budget to have been $8.9 million. I don't know where they got that number. They don't seem to source how they got that number. So I have no idea exactly how accurate that is, but I have no reason to believe that they're lying. And the only other source that I could find that gave a specific number was a Reddit post from 3 years ago that seemed to claim the movie was made on a $3 million budget, which I don't know if that's accurate either. They don't give a specific source for that. I looked through the comments. They don't seem to say where they got that number. So I don't know which one of these is correct. I don't know if either of them are correct. They could both be wrong. It is impossible to say. Anyway, this is Big Uke signing off. And it wasn't released outside the UK until 2013, I think. This movie's very hard to research. And even then was only available in the US for a limited time, and wasn't released anywhere else, ever. Now you might be thinking, well, that's not so bad. Plenty of movies have done well on the home video market, even movies that were never released in theaters. And that would be true, except for the fact that, unlike those movies, once again, the movie didn't really have any marketing. There wasn't a TV spot advertising the DVD release, or a poster anywhere. So unless you knew someone who already knew about the movie, you wouldn't know about the movie. And on top of all that, it wasn't sold in stores. Yeah, GW in their infinite wisdom decided that it would be a better business decision to make this movie available exclusively through a single website from which you could order the DVD. And if you look up that website now, it doesn't even exist. It just redirects to some sort of strange Indonesian scam website. Even disregarding that, if someone needs to go to a specific website for a movie to learn that the movie even exists and is available to purchase, that makes your movie basically unable to be found and purchased. And also, having an entire website where the exclusive purpose of it is to sell one movie and one movie only isn't exactly a sound business decision. There's a reason why Netflix doesn't just have the second season of The Office on it and nothing else. These fucking psychotic business decisions would be at least somewhat understandable if this movie was clearly made for the fans who would go out of their way to see this movie and nobody else. It almost definitely would have still not done well and would have lost a shit ton of money, because that's a stupid idea, but there would at least be some logic to it. You could see where point A leads to point B, even if point A and B are both on fire. But from watching the movie, it feels like they go out of their way to make it an introduction for people who either know nothing or very little about Warhammer. So, why was it made like this? It would be like if the instructions for your DVD player were on a DVD disc, exclusively. I genuinely can't wrap my head around this. If anyone has an explanation, I'd love to hear it in the comments. Maybe there's something I missed in my research that would explain this, or someone who was there at the time this movie was released could give me a better explanation as to why this movie's release was like that. But until then, I got nothing. Putting all of that aside, another aspect of why you probably haven't heard of this movie is that Games Workshop themselves seem to have forgotten about it. Since this movie represents a pretty massive blunder on the part of Games Workshop, they haven't really acknowledged the film's existence since its release. It hasn't been made available in any official capacity, it's absent from any streaming platform, including Warhammer Plus, and while you can get it off Amazon for the low price of fuck off and die, I'm pretty sure that these listings are all unofficial. But on top of it being buried by GW, It's also been buried by the community. Basically, nobody talks about Ultramarines, and when they do, it's in hushed tones, like a racist family member at Thanksgiving dinner, which feels weird. I mean, the movie isn't great, but it's fine. People seem to have more genuine love and appreciation for Warhammer properties that are objectively bad than they do for this perfectly fine action movie. But maybe that's the reason it's so forgotten. It's not exactly a novel observation that a boring movie is usually worse than a bad movie. If the movie were abysmal dog shit, there would at least be something to say about it, and thus it would be talked about a little more. If the movie were great, it would probably have gained some sort of cult classic status and been enjoyed by a small percentage of psychotic freaks on the internet, like me. But as it stands, nobody seems to care enough about the movie to even acknowledge its existence, meaning that it will forever fade into the sands of time. There's absolutely more stuff to talk about in regards to this weird as fuck movie, like the lore inaccuracies or the film's development, but I personally don't care. If you like Warhammer and you can handle seeing some janky animation, there are definitely worse things you could be doing with your time. Anyway, 0 out of 10, not enough women. I'm never making a video about Warhammer ever again. Like and subscribe.